Berlin, April 1945. The city was dying. Flames devoured buildings. Smoke filled the sky like a black curtain drawn over history itself. Artillery shook the earth, and the once mighty German capital, once the symbol of a regime that sought to conquer the world, was now reduced to rubble. The story everyone knows begins here: Adolf Hitler, trapped in his bunker, his empire crumbling, taking his own life with Eva Braun as Soviet troops closed in. But, what if that's not how it really ended? What if, beneath the chaos, a second plan had already been set in motion, a plan so secret, so meticulously executed, that even those inside the Reich's inner circle never saw it coming? By the spring of 1945, the Third Reich was finished. Soviet tanks rolled in from the east, the Allies advanced from the west, and the world waited for the inevitable fall of Berlin. Inside the Führerbunker, despair and delusion mixed like poison. Yet, amid the chaos, whispers began circulating among the remaining officers, rumors of coded messages, secret flights, and hidden airfields prepared for one final escape. One of those officers, decades later, would break his silence. His confession, found in a forgotten notebook after his death, would challenge everything we thought we knew about the war's final chapter. He wrote, "The Führer did not die that night. His death was staged. The orders came from higher than we imagined." As early as 1943, certain members of Hitler's inner circle, particularly Martin Bormann, understood the inevitable. The war could not be won by guns and tanks alone. But money could outlive empires. While the world watched battles unfold, Bormann and a select few quietly prepared for the Reich's survival, not militarily, but financially. Codenamed Operation Kontinuität, or Continuity, the plan aimed to ensure the Nazi machine's legacy would live on in secret. Hundreds of millions of Reichsmarks were laundered through neutral banks. Art, gold, and valuables were smuggled out through Spain, Switzerland, and Sweden. Companies were registered under false names. Safe houses were arranged across South America. And according to later declassified files, at least a dozen submarines were modified to carry passengers, not torpedoes. But who were those passengers meant to be? By February 1945, Bormann initiated Operation Serpent, the final step in the continuity plan. The operation's purpose: to evacuate key individuals before Berlin fell. Officially, these were scientists and diplomats. Unofficially, they were members of the Führer's shadow circle, men whose knowledge and influence were too valuable to lose. Several small airstrips around Berlin were designated as last resort evacuation points. One such airfield, near Tempelhof, was cleared of non-essential staff. Late-night flights departed under blackout conditions, their manifests erased or destroyed. Witnesses recalled hearing the drone of engines in the distance during the last week of April, flights that should not have been possible. And in one of those planes, some believe, was Adolf Hitler himself. The officer's confession is what changed everything. His name remains redacted in official archives, but his testimony, verified by handwriting experts, paints a haunting picture. "I was stationed in Berlin in those final days," he wrote. "We were told that the Führer's safety was paramount. On the evening of April 28, I received orders to escort a convoy from the Reich Chancellery to the airfield. The passengers were classified as special priority. We were not to look, not to speak, only to obey." He described a scene that would have seemed unthinkable: a small group, cloaked and silent, escorted through the smoke-filled streets toward a waiting aircraft. Among them was a man wearing the Führer's familiar overcoat, his face hidden under a cap and scarf. The man did not speak, the officer continued. But when he passed, the others saluted. The plane departed just after midnight. When the officer returned, he was told never to mention the event again. 2 days later, Berlin fell, and the world was told Hitler was dead. But was he? After Germany's surrender, something strange began happening in the South Atlantic. Allied intelligence recorded sightings of unidentified submarines surfacing weeks, sometimes months, after the war officially ended. Two of these vessels, U-530 and U-977, appeared off the coast of Argentina in July and August of 1945. Their crews surrendered without resistance, claiming they had been on patrol. But their stories didn't add up. The journey times, fuel consumption, and disappearance from radio contact all pointed to something far more mysterious. The Argentine Navy's own report mentioned that one of the submarines may have carried high-ranking passengers who disembarked before surrender. And then, in a remote Patagonian village called San Antonio Oeste, local fishermen reported a strange sight, a U-boat emerging under moonlight, offloading crates, and a handful of men who vanished into the forest with military precision. Those crates were never recovered. Argentina in the 1940s was a peculiar place. Under President Juan Perón, it became a haven for fleeing Nazis. Passports were forged, identities rewritten, and entire lives rebuilt. By 1946, German-speaking enclaves had sprung up in Bariloche, Córdoba, and Misiones. The officers' notes describe one such journey, through Spain to the Canary Islands, then by sea to South America. The travelers used the name, Herr Fischer, a detail later echoed in several declassified Allied reports. He wrote, "We were told to protect the cargo at all costs. When we reached Patagonia, the crates were taken inland by truck. Two of them contained documents, another carried gold. But one, larger, heavier, was never opened in front of us." Among the men traveling with him, he said, was a short, older man with a trimmed mustache and gray hair. He spoke little, the officer noted, but when he did, everyone stopped to listen. Bariloche, Argentina, a serene lakeside town surrounded by the Andes, would later become infamous for one thing, its unusually high number of Nazi fugitives. Decades after the war, several journalists uncovered hidden compounds and estates linked to German immigrants. Among them, the most mysterious was the Inalco House, a secluded mansion built in 1943 with strikingly European architecture. Local rumors told of a German couple who lived there after the war, rarely seen, always protected. They called the man the Old German. According to a 1950s Argentine police file, later leaked to reporters, a European man matching Hitler's appearance was treated by a local doctor in the region for stomach ailments. His name in the records? K. Braun. Could K. Braun have been a fabricated identity derived from Eva Braun's surname? The officer's confession ended abruptly after describing his arrival at a mountain house, where the air was quiet, and the man in the overcoat finally removed his scarf. The final line read, "I saw his face. I will never forget it. If Hitler escaped, he did not do so alone." Martin Bormann, Hitler's secretary and the true architect of the Reich's survival network, allegedly escaped Berlin as well. For decades, his fate remained uncertain. Officially, a skeleton found in Berlin in 1972 was identified as Bormann's. Yet DNA tests decades later raised doubts, and documents discovered in Argentina pointed to Bormann's financial dealings continuing well into the 1950s. One declassified OSS memorandum from 1946 described Bormann's accounts in Swiss banks, funneled through intermediaries connected to Perón's government. The same network that financed post-war Nazi escapes also funded German industrial recovery projects, ironically laying part of the groundwork for West Germany's economic miracle. Could the Reich's true continuity have been economic, not military? In 2017, a massive collection of U.S. intelligence files was declassified. Among them were documents referencing sightings of a German political leader presumed dead in Argentina between 1945 and 1950. The FBI received anonymous letters claiming that the Führer lives in Patagonia under the protection of loyalists. While official investigations yielded no confirmation, what struck researchers most was the consistency of these reports. Multiple witnesses, across years, describing the same region, the same man, the same presence. Even Soviet intelligence was uncertain. When the Red Army stormed the bunker, Joseph Stalin himself doubted the suicide story. During the Potsdam Conference, he told U.S. officials, "Hitler is not dead. He escaped to Argentina." Was that paranoia, or knowledge? According to fragments of the officer's notes and corroborating local testimonies, the old German lived a quiet existence until the early 1960s. He rarely ventured beyond his property. His hair turned white, his posture weakened, but he continued to dictate notes to a trusted aide, believed to have been a former SS adjutant. In February 1962, he reportedly died in his sleep. A small funeral was held in a private chapel near Bariloche. No photographs exist. The attendees were few, all elderly, all German. The officer wrote. The burial was unmarked. He wanted no monuments, no speeches. Only silence. Decades later, a local gravedigger claimed to have been paid to move the remains to another site, an untraceable act that ensured the trail would vanish forever. So, what does this all mean? Could one of history's most infamous figures truly have slipped through the cracks of war and justice? Historians remain divided. Skeptics argue that the physical evidence, Hitler's dental remains found in the bunker, proves his death. But even that evidence has been disputed. In 2009, Russian scientists admitted that a skull long believed to be Hitler's belonged instead to a woman under 40. If that's true, whose remains were burned in the Reich Chancellery courtyard? The confession, the submarine sightings, the bank transfers, the declassified reports, all may be fragments of a greater puzzle that still resists completion. Perhaps the most chilling aspect of this story isn't whether Hitler escaped, but what his escape symbolizes. The idea that power can survive collapse, that evil can endure